pleasure. Thanks so much for being here this morning.
Maria, always a pleasure to be on.
I want to get your take on how serious this leak is. I'm looking at some of the information that came out of the leak, okay? I mean, we can be upset about a leak, but when you actually look at what was in the leak, and now we understand that nearly 100 special forces from 5 Western countries, including more than a dozen Americans, have been operating on the ground in Ukraine, according to this leaked document. So we have troops on the ground in Ukraine. Were you aware of that? Was this something that Congress was supposed to be consulted on to send troops to Ukraine?
Well, first of all, the leak is wrong, and there needs to be criminal prosecution. It puts our intelligence officers at risk. I am all for transparency. The appropriate place to have that is in hearings with the Armed Services Committee. Now, I did not know, and we will be asking if there are actual American troops on the ground in Ukraine. That should be the subject of an armed services hearing, but that doesn't justify in any way someone stealing American classified information and leaking that.
Oh, absolutely not. But I mean, my issue is with what we're learning, and that is that there are troops. I mean, Congress is supposed to authorize troops on the ground. What we're understanding from this leak is that special ops, 14 special ops are there right now.
Well, look, I have been a strong proponent that Congress needs to authorize any military involvement in conflict. I have said that in Yemen. I said that in some of our operations in Africa. I had said that about interventions in the Middle East. And so we will have hearings in the Armed Services Committee. And certainly I would take the position that before any American troops should be on the ground in Ukraine, it needs to come to Congress for authorization.
Right, absolutely. All right, let me switch gears, ask you something else that you've been calling for, and that is that 89-year-old California Senator Dianne Feinstein steps down. She's vowing to return to Capitol Hill as soon as possible. She is facing growing calls to resign. She's asked Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer to allow another Democrat senator to temporarily replace her on the Senate Judiciary Committee. Congressman, you're calling for her resignation. You did so in a tweet earlier this week. Why?
Ray, I don't understand why this is actually that controversial a position or why I've taken some heat for it. It's a pretty simple principle. I don't know any job in this country where you can just not show up, have no expectation of returning, and continue to have that job. Senator Feinstein has had a distinguished public service career, but ultimately she works for the people of California, the largest state, and California deserves a senator who's going to be present at the Judiciary Committees voting on judicial nominations.
Well, look, I couldn't agree more on that. You've got to get to work. But, Congressman, let's face it, you're in the House of Representatives. Why do you care? Do you want to run for her seat?
I don't. In fact, I've endorsed someone else for her seat, and there's every likelihood that the governor could appoint someone who's a caretaker, so it won't even affect the race. This is honestly just about making sure that someone is there to vote. I mean, Senator Durbin said that the president's judicial nominations are being held up because Senator Feinstein isn't present. And I've respected Senator Feinstein's career. I just hope that she does the right thing here.
Well, we don't know if the Communist Party of China has infiltrated Dianne Feinstein's work, by the way, because we learned a couple of years ago that she had a Chinese spy working with her for, 20 years. We understand the surveillance that the CCP has put on America, Congressman, and you have been really strong on this subject. Congratulations on taking something on that many of your colleagues are afraid to do. I don't know why. I don't understand why we're not on the same page on this across the board in America. But you actually took the trip. You went on a bipartisan trip last week to Hollywood and to Silicon Valley. You met with technology and entertainment executives to discuss the China threat. Disney CEO Bob Iger, Apple CEO Tim Cook, all meeting and talking with you. Can you tell us a little about what you learned in those meetings, Congressman? Because to me, it appears that corporate America is a problem. They want to sell to 1 billion people. They want this economic relationship to prosper, even as the Communist Party has had such bad behavior on the global stage. Are they missing the national security threats that exist here between the U.S. and China?
First, Marie, just on the point with Senator Feinstein, I mean, I don't want to in any way imply that the Chinese Communist Party had involvement with her. I don't have evidence on that. I just think we have to be careful without evidence, and I'm open to a conversation. But really that has to be very, very careful before making that allegation against
did she not have a driver who was a spy?
I don't know the facts. I'll let others speak to that, okay. But I certainly would not be making that characterization personally because I don't have any knowledge of that. But I will say on the broader point that you're right, that there has to be an economic rebalancing in China. What we heard from people like Bob Iger, Tim Cook, others, is actually that they're concerned. Their market access has been restricted. They've seen Xi Jinping go from someone who was much more easy and willing to work with America to being far more restrictive. They're concerned about their supply chains in China and are looking to diversify. And so actually, I think there's been a big wake-up call in some of the corporate America from 5-6 years ago, and a recognition that we made a colossal mistake in this country to basically between 2000 and 2010, because of allowing China into the World Trade Organization, let our entire, most of our production base go over to China. I don't know any other country that does that. Yeah,
it's a great point that you make, and it's good to hear you say that you think that these guys get it. Because up until now, it's been, a conversation that's been all about economics. I'm wondering what you believe the U.S. has in terms of leverage here. Because right now we know that the CCP has most favored nation status when it comes to trade. Congressman, is that one of the levers that you could pull to keep the CCP in check? Would you pursue removing that most favored nation status for China's trade?
I'm open to it, and I certainly think we have a lot of leverage. We're the customer. We're the buyer. We're therefore more dependent on us buying than we are on them. I'm certainly open to strategic tariffs, to making sure that they're not dumping. And I have said that the president should have a clear goal. Let's have a trade balance with China by the end of the decade. We've got a $400 billion trade surplus. They don't buy from us, and we buy from them. This is why I don't understand why TikTok is even an issue. Of course, they should be forced to sell it. They don't allow any of our tech companies in there. They don't allow Twitter. They don't allow Facebook. They don't allow Snap. So why should we have an unreciprocal relationship? I guess we need to insist on the economic relationship being balanced.
Yeah, that's right. And we are talking about a serious deficit when it comes to what we sell into China and what China is selling here. Do you think that comes to the floor anytime soon to remove the most favored nation status?
It is something that our committee is exploring, and we're going to have unanimous recommendations. I know that there was a manufacturing council that recommended that. And I think you see Haley Stevens and I had an op-ed talking about the importance of rebalancing trade. I actually think you could get bipartisan consensus that the most favored nation status and World Trade Organization of China didn't work because they're not playing by the rule.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. They're not playing by the rules. Congressman, thanks for your work on the China Committee and all of your work. We appreciate you joining me this morning. Thank you, sir.